Hi everybody, Bill here, and welcome to a top 10 list. I know it's been a while. I've been meaning to do this for about a month, but, you know, as John Lennon once eloquently said, life is what happens when you're busy doing other things. Before I get to the list, I just want to say there haven't been much reviews lately, and that because of recent events with the virus and all of us having to be, avoiding public places. I'm going to be straight up honest. There's probably not going to be another movie review for at least a month. And with all the movies getting postponed because of all this, yeah, so there might not be as many videos as possible, but we got to do what we can. So, that aside, since, my job has been kind of dead with all this going on, and I've been having to, stay in the house, and we've been advised to avoid gatherings, I'm like thinking, you know what? I've wanted to do this video for a month, so I might as well do it. With the Oscars, because I want to do this video around the Oscars, with the Oscars last month, it's always weird that we think of, Best Pictures are one of the best movies. But there are movies that were Best Picture, movies that didn't win Best Picture, but they're still considered great. And there's a ton of them. But today, we're counting down the top 10 Oscar top 10 Oscar Best Picture non-winners. Now, here's the criteria. They've had to be nominated for Best Picture. You can't pick a movie that wasn't nominated. So, Dark Knight and 2001: A Space Odyssey will unfortunately not be on this list. Alright, this is all just my personal opinion. If you disagree with me, that's cool. Doesn't mean you're dumb, doesn't mean you're a terrible person. Tell me what your favorite non-winners are down below. Okay, so without further ado, let's do it. My number 10 is the movie that started Disney's resurgence back into pop culture relevance. Well, one of them, Beauty and the Beast. Yeah. The story of Belle, who gets trapped in a castle while meeting the Beast, who was cursed by a sorcerer, and if he doesn't fall in love by his 21st birthday, he will stay a beast forever. This was the real start of the Disney Renaissance. Okay, if you want to get technical, Little Mermaid was the one that officially was the first film of the Disney Renaissance, but I think this was the one that made the Renaissance take off. The animation is beautiful. Paige O'Hara as Belle is great, and she could really sing too. The characters, Belle, the Beast, Lumiere, Mrs. Potts, Clocksworth, you cannot forget these characters. And the music written by the great Alan Menken and the late great Howard Ashman, you all know the songs. Belle, Something There, Be Our Guest, Beauty and the Beast, you know the songs. And it's just, and also this was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. That really shows how great this movie is, because back then, this is when the Best Picture noms were only 5, and now that they're 10, there were other animated movies that were Best Picture noms after Beauty and the Beast, but those were when it was extended to 10. Are those movies that were nominated just as good? Well, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but like I said, this was the movie, because this was part of the big four of the Disney Renaissance, a Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King, that really kick-started everything, and that's why it has a spot on this list. Coming in at number 9, probably the oldest movie on this list, The Pride of the Yankees. Alright, the movie stars Gary Cooper, which is in this biopic of great Yankees first baseman Lou Gehrig. This movie is it's black and white, but I love it. For those of you who don't know, I am a huge baseball fan. I'm especially a huge Yankee fan, and Lou Gehrig, one of my favorite players, and Gary Cooper does a great job as Lou Gehrig, and also Bob Meusel, Bill Dickey, and the great Babe Ruth actually all appear in this movie. And the movie, okay, spoiler, I think, how it shows all of Lou Gehrig's life. A part that I think is a little bit of a gut-wrencher was, okay, versus the non-gut-wrenching scene. He's in a kid's hospital with Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth's promising the kid he's going to hit him a home run. And Babe Ruth and everybody leaves, and the kid asks him, "Can you sign my ball?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can you hit me a home run?" And he goes, "You just had Babe Ruth promise you hit you a home run." He goes, "Can you hit me one?" Going, "Okay, I'll hit you one." He goes, "Hit me two." Go, "Okay." And what is great is that game, he literally hits 2 home runs. But here's the gut-wrenching scene. Years later, towards the end of the movie, which, okay, this isn't really a spoiler, but anyone who really knows history, you know what happens at the end. Lou Gehrig gets sick. He has to retire. They've given him a big day at Yankee Stadium, and that's where he makes his famous, "Today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth" speech. But when he's going in, he sees that kid. He goes, "Mr. Gehrig, I don't know if you remember me. Many years ago, I was in the hospital, and you promised to hit me 2 home runs, and you did." And he goes, "Look, I can walk now." And that scene, thinking about it, really tugs at the heartstring, because you're thinking, this man gave that kid a reason to live. And I think it's even more gut-wrenching than the actual speech. And, listen, I think that speech is one of the greatest things ever. Because I always think about it, this was a man who knew he was going to die, but yet he was so grateful for everything life had given him. And, yeah, just one more thing. Eleanor Gehrig, Lou Gehrig's widow, actually said that she really liked Gary Cooper in the movie and said that he was perfect to play the role. Okay, number 8. Another baseball movie, ironically. Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner plays a farmer in Iowa that is then told by a voice to, "You build it, they will come." He doesn't know what it means. But then it basically leads him to tear down his crops and build a baseball field. And then all the old baseball players of the past, like Shoeless Joe Jackson, and a lot of them all come back. And throughout this movie, he also becomes friends with a reclusive writer, Terrence Mann, played by James Earl Jones. Fun fact, that author, Terrence Mann, was actually based off J.D. Salinger, who was actually the author in the original short story. But I think Salinger didn't want his name being used, and he threatened legal action to the studio if they did that in the movie. Yeah, I think he threatened legal action or something, but I could be wrong, I don't know. But Yeah, but you all know what the trademark scene is. Like, near the end, he sees a ball player, and it was his dad, because his dad was like a minor league baseball player, and I'm sorry, I get choked up talking about it. He comes over and he goes, and he says to his daughter, "This is John." Doesn't say dad, John, which is a bit of a cold scene. And then they talk, and he thanks him for building the field, and then one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in film history. He looks and goes, "Hey Dad, wanna play catch?" I dare you to watch that scene and not cry. Like I said, great baseball film, I think. Kevin Costner does a good job. It's fantastic. It's a really emotional roller coaster. All right, number 7. The Wolf of Wall Street. This movie tells the true story of Jordan Belfort, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who runs a stock firm called Stratman Omonk, I think that's what it's called, which runs a pump and dump scheme and takes people's money, but he gets rich. And this movie, I remember seeing this movie in theaters. As much as I liked it, I was just sitting there shocked as hell. I was amazed by it. I remember months later when I got it on DVD, I was watching it with my dad and my brother, and my mom was in the room. In the opening scene, for those who don't know, DiCaprio is snorting out of a person's behind. In case this video is a candidate for monetization, I'm trying to keep it at least PG. And my mom was in the room, and she goes, "Time for me to leave?" And we're like, "Yeah." But this movie is just 3 hours of absolute craziness. One of the big concerns answering this movie is this is kind of glorify what Jordan Belfort did. If you want my answer, no. He even said, I view it more as a cautionary tale, more than glorification. And yeah, it features sex, drugs, debauchery. It is a damn good time. Coming into number 6. Steven Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, this actually has an interesting story behind it. After Spielberg was nominated for Jaws, somebody came up to him and said, "Okay, so what's your next project?" He goes, "I want to do James Bond." And said, "You can't do James Bond. Only the Brits do James Bond." So he made this, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because as sort of like an American James Bond. And it is a good time. Harrison Ford plays explorer Indiana Jones that's trying to get the Ark of the Covenant from the Nazis. It's just such a fun time. The music is absolutely iconic. And especially the face melting scene, which is going to give your kids nightmares, which creeped me out at first, but I love it. But I will admit, out of the Indiana Jones movies, I would say it's my second favorite, the first being Last Crusade, but I still enjoy this movie, and I think it's really worth a watch. You'll have fun. Okay, coming in at number 5. Yeah, I think we're at 5. Yeah, 5. The Shawshank Redemption. Based on the novella by Stephen King, Shawshank Redemption tells the story of two prisoners, Red and Andy. Andy, who gets 2 life sentences for allegedly killing his wife and her lover. And he's played by Tim Robbins, and meets up and befriends Red, played by Morgan Freeman. And the thing is, the movie, it's more of a character-driven story than a story-driven, because it's just, you know, these two men getting to know each other, and some people would be turned off because it takes place in a prison, but to me, the prison is only the location. It's really not about, well, yeah, they show, like, what happens in prison, but it's more about these two men just going through their lives. And in a way, it's a story of hope. There's a scene, and it's a beautiful scene. Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman are sitting there, and they're talking about one day if they're ever going to get out. And Morgan Freeman's character says, the only way I'm going to get out is if I have a scraggly white beard. Basically telling him, yeah, I'm never getting out. Well, Tim Robbins' character, who has a heavier sentence, goes, no, I think I'm going to get out. Because, you know what? You either get busy living or get busy dying. And it's just, Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman do a great job. This is one of the movies that in that controversial year in 1994 that could have won Best Picture, but Forrest Gump ended up winning. Another one's on this list, but we'll get to that when we get to that. It's just a real emotional roller coaster, and I really like it. Coming in at number 4, and this was actually a movie that was nominated this year, 1917. Okay, for those of you who didn't see my review, 1917 was my favorite movie of 2019. It really shows the horrors of war. It shows, you know, about the two, okay, it tells the story about two men during World War I who have to deliver a message to a brigade, or to a unit, calling off an attack that's supposed to take place the next day, because one of the soldiers, his brother's in that unit, and if he doesn't call that attack, 1,600 people will die. And the movie is just them beating the clock. And some of the war, whilst disturbing, it's, again, more of a character thing. Like, there is a scene when one of the soldiers does, unfortunately, gets killed. And he looks to goes, can you just tell my brother I didn't die alone? And just give him this message and tell him what his brother looks like. It's just, you really want him to now deliver that message, or else his friend there died for nothing. And and I think the thing that really hits everything, there is a scene when there's a song. It's called Wayfaring Stranger. If you watched my review of it, it's actually the song I sing in the very beginning. And I've actually touched upon this in review because it really shows I can die any day. I can get killed in battle. And this movie, it's just heart pumping. You really want to see what happens. It just keeps leading you on. And you want to know, is he going to get the message straight? Is he going to get the message? Is he going to get the message? Is he going to get the message? And it's actually dedicated to the memory of director Sam Mendes' grandfather or great-grandfather, who was actually in World War I. And I think it was based on all the stories he told him. Just a heart-pounding, just great, deep movie that really, boom, hits you. Okay, my number 3, Pulp Fiction. Now, which I would call probably Quentin Tarantino's magnum opus. Pulp Fiction, there's really like a bunch of different stories. You have the story, but they all come together. John Travolta as Vince Neil, Samuel L. Jackson as Jules, as the two hitmen for Marcellus Wallace. Their chemistry is great. Bruce Willis as, I forgot the boxer's name, but his story, how he ties in about how he's supposed to take the fall from Marcellus Wallace, and just like everything that goes on. Listen, it's really hard to explain. You got to watch the movie. I will admit, there are times it's a little difficult to keep up with, but I think this is Tarantino's masterpiece. And of course, who doesn't like the scene with John Travolta and Uma Thurman when they're dancing together? Awesome. Like I said, the plot's a little complicated. It's not that I don't think it's good. It's really good. And this was actually one of the other movies nominated in '94, along with Shawshank Redemption and Forrest Gump, that some people said Pulp Fiction should have won, but I like Forrest Gump too. But I think it's really worth a watch. If you're a Quentin Tarantino fan, this is the movie you need to watch. Alright. Number 2. Another Spielberg movie, Saving Private Ryan. And I hate to get back to 1917 for a moment, but I remember when I first saw 1917, I was kind of comparing it to Saving Private Ryan a little bit. Because it's a story about saving brothers and stuff, and for those of you who don't know the story of Saving Private Ryan, it takes place after the events of D-Day in Normandy during World War II, when U.S. soldiers land on Omaha Beach. Captain Thomas Miller, played by Tom Hanks, is leading a battalion after he gets the news of a rescue mission to save Private Ryan, played by Matt Damon, after 3 of his brothers were killed in action. And there is a lot of gore in this movie. There's a lot of gore and a lot of blood. But in a way, it's kind of shows the horrors of war. Not just the violence, but it shows them walking through war-torn villages and how everything is just destroyed. And you see what it does to people. And, you know, the beginning when you see the people die. And, okay, again, so I'm giving so many spoilers, but the end of the movie, when Tom Hanks' character is killed in battle, years later, you see an elderly Private Ryan at Captain Miller's grave. And he goes, "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be standing here with my family. You're the reason I'm still alive. Thank you." And then Private Ryan's wife comes over, and she goes to his grave, and Private Ryan looks at her and goes, "Tell me I'm a good man." She goes, "But why?" He goes, "Just tell me I'm a good man." And then at the end, he salutes Captain Miller's grave, and it's... Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional through all this, but this was actually the heavy favorite to win, but it ended up losing to Shakespeare in Love, and this is probably one of the most realistic portrayals of D-Day. One of the most realistic portrayals. Even though it's a fictional story, I think this has one of the most realistic portrayals. Okay, before we get to number 1, I have to give you some honorable mentions. Okay, first honorable mention is Gangs of New York. In my mind, I think this is a really underrated Marty Scorsese movie. Leo DiCaprio does good, so does Cameron Diaz. Daniel Day-Lewis is Bill the Butcher. I think everything is just really well put together. It's a long movie, but it really talks about a point of history, the draft riots during the Civil War, which is something that, in all honesty, not a lot of people talk about. And I'm glad we got to see, this part of history. Okay, another one is BlacKkKlansman. This is my first and only Spike Lee movie. I know, Let the Riots Begin, which tells the story of Ron Stallworth, played by John David Washington, a new black cop who disguises himself with the help of his Jewish partner, Flip, played by Adam Driver, to basically infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. It's a story of race and unrest and hate, which still exists today in today's climate. And my final one, Toy Story 3, which was another one of the animated movies that were nominated for Best Picture. And it just really shows, for those of us who grew up with the franchise, I feel like that franchise goes into life, because I'm sure, at the end of that one, most of the kids who grew up, the first one came out the year after I was born, but most of the kids who grew up with that movie were now at Andy's age and getting ready to go to college. And one of Pixar's best. Okay, now my number one Oscar Best Picture non-winner. You know what, guys? As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. You guessed it, Goodfellas. One of my favorite movies. Tells the story of Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, who becomes a associate of the Lucchese crime family. Shows about the years of his association with Paulie, one of, the guy who runs the cab stand when the mobsters gather, played by Paul Sorvino. Jimmy Conway, Jimmy Burke in real life, played by Robert De Niro, who is a mob boss, and Tommy DeVito, played by Joe Pesci. It's really a story of how power can really influence someone. And it's a 3-hour film, but it just tells such a compelling story. It's basically 30 years of Henry's life from when he was a kid. Shows to his, his adolescence, his adulthood, his marriage to Karen, played by Lorraine Bracco, how he just gets intoxicated in the life, and then eventually leads to his arrest and downfall, and him breaking the #1 rule that Jimmy Conway gives him in the beginning, and that is, never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut. And it really shows, it kind of has a message of Wolf of Wall Street. It's a cautionary tale. Because, yeah, it shows how powerful that lifestyle is, but at the end, it shows that it really came back to bite him in the ass. And this movie, it's also based on the book Wise Guy by Nicholas P. Dielli, which, if anyone has a chance to read it, it's a really good book. But this movie, wonderful adaptation. And, yeah, it's a gruesome, graphic movie. I would say Marty Scorsese's best, and I'm surprised he didn't win an Oscar for it. But I would say this and The Godfather are probably in competition of what's the best mob movie. But, everybody has their own opinion. And if you want to tell me which one you like better, Godfather or Goodfellas, let me know down in the comments. Okay, that's my list of top 10 non-Best Picture Oscar winner. I hope you enjoyed. And, I have other lists that I'm going to be doing soon. And, guys, I have a favor to ask you. My birthday is this Tuesday. And unfortunately, because of this whole situation that's been happening, my plans have kind of been iced. So, here's what I want you to do. like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell their friends to share, and please tell them to subscribe, and then tell their friends to subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me and the channel, and it would really be a great birthday gift for me. So just share this with people you know. Alright guys, tell me that's my list. Tell me what you thought. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.